Hello YouTube. We're making another video for you today. This one will be top 10 fun decks in no particular order to play at your locals. Unless you're dominated by meta decks, then well, maybe you should just be running anti-meta.
If your locals is completely dominated by meta, then your only option is to freaking find a way to beat them or join them.
I suggest joining them. Conform.
Join them. Join the dark side.
Play barrier statues and rig your dice to go first.
All right.
I didn't
So
laugh.
so we're gonna be alternating our decks or the decks that we picked. We think are fun to play at like local or low tier events. And the first up is Stefan's.
I personally like Paleozoic frogs. They're sort of competitive, but they're a very go first deck because if your opponent sets up a really busted field, you have to draw perfectly to get the hand to get out of it. For your combo pieces typically are Swap Frog into Ronin Totem, and then you use Paleozoic Dino Miscus to banish away things that can be targeted. The whole point of the deck, though, is typically to get out Totally Awesome. But don't let that confuse you, because I have had the Reapers used on me before, and they've gotten rid of my Totally Awesome, and all I've had to do, really, was just beat their face in with rank 2 monsters. Because the deck makes more than Totally Awesome. It only makes Totally Awesome because you want to protect your back row, and you just want to stun your opponent. But when you take Totally Awesome away from the deck, now I'm just going to beat your face.
Yep. I'm
And
going to and my first deck to talk about is Great Kaijus. Now, I know what you're thinking. Great Kaijus? What is this? That's like so last year. Yes. But the good thing about Great Kaijus is so Greatles, all of them have an effect that when they're destroyed by battle in the monster zone, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and equip it and take all of it. And then if they get rid of the Gradle that's equipped to it, which would be in the spell and trap card zone, you destroy that monster. So, and for our example, we chose Alligator, which has the effect of, if it's destroyed by spells. Alligator is my favorite out of the Gradles because he has a lot more synergies. Like he has synergies with his with their search card, which is a continuous spell card. He has better synergy. Like you could put him into the Metal Foe deck if you wanted to, and destroy him with Metal Foes and with the Pendulum Scales. And since they're considered spell cards, you can take control of a monster. And overall, it's just really good. And then also part of the Great Kaiju deck is you get the Kaijus like Gamma Seal. And the best part about Gamma Seal is you actually are gonna get to use his negate effect in the deck, or you can, because you are going to play the field spell and you are going to play all these good cards, and your deck is this stun deck that has all the removal you could ever want. And to top it all off, you get the benefit of running skill drain because you're stealing their monsters and you can tribute away whatever monster you don't like and give them a big old stupid kaiju, and then your monsters are big and they're dumb, and you just stun their field to death.
alright, and then I picked another deck that I like to play at locals, and a lot of people really like this deck apparently, and that's Cyber Dragons. It is a very one-turn kill deck, or it's stun. There's different variations of this deck, and I feel like every person that's almost ever played this deck will always bring something new to the deck, because if you're not bringing anything new to the deck to make it unique, then you're not playing Cyber Dragons right, because no Cyber Dragon deck should really ever be the same as another one. The upside to running Cyber Dragon is you get access to things like Cyber Dragon Infinity and Cyber Dragon Nova. Infinity is pretty much unfair version of Totally Awesome. Not completely unfair, but I mean, because Totally Awesome will set cards and stuff. But Cyber Dragon also has the effect of, or Infinity has the effect on your turn to suck up monsters, which I think is a little less unfair than, say, Totally Awesome just setting your Raigeki, because you can play around a card that you know is being set. And then Nova's good in this deck because it can cheat out some of your other cards. If you run any of the Cyber Dragon fusions, which you should, if Nova gets destroyed, he can summon just about any of them that can be special summoned. That, and you can use him to extend into other rank 5s using Link monsters. Eventually, we're going to be getting the Cliffwort card that is generic machine. God only knows when we're going to get it. I really don't want to look it up because I hate looking into cards too far into the future and get hyped about them and find out we don't get them. But the upside to this deck is you also get this new card, Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon, which can do a lot of stuff that is great. My favorite part about it is you can send a card from extra deck zones to summon it, which is pretty decent in my opinion. It can just stop plays from happening, or it can even get you out of another Infinity if your opponent played
It's
it for
worth
some reason.
mentioning. It's worth mentioning with Mega Fleet Dragon that if your opponent manages to extra lock you out, so to say, like they get both extra monster zones, you could just summon a Cyber Dragon and then just link away their 2 monsters, and then it has 3,200 or 3,600 attack.
What's also good about this card is it says Cyber Dragon Monster and not Cyber Dragon in particular. So even if they Book of Moon your Cyber Dragon core or any of the other Cyber Dragon cards, you can just flip them face up, reveal it to them, and contact fuse.
Next deck, I'm here to talk about our Lunalights. Lunalights, I've always liked them, but until recently, we were missing 2 cards. We were missing the Kaleido Chick and the Crimson Fox. And for my examples of them today, I have Kaleido Chick and Black Sheep, and I have these 2 here because they're kind of the bread and butter of the deck. Because what they do is Kaleido Chick allows you to send a Lunalight monster from your main deck or your extra deck to the graveyard. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would you want to do that? Well, it becomes the name of the scent monster, as treated as that for a fusion material. So, like, you can just go into your biggest Lunalight, and I'll talk about that in a second. This card also has the effect that if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to add your polymerization back, and if it's banished, your opponent can't activate anything during the battle phase, so it protects the fusion monsters, preferably. And Black Sheep's really good because it adds polymerization. And then if it's or a Lunalight monster from your graveyard to your hand, except for itself, and if it's used as a fusion material, you can get one of your Lunalight Pendulum monsters back from your extra deck, one of your Lunalight monsters from your graveyard back to your hand, except for itself. And it's not a once per turn at all, so you can just, if you open up multiple Black Sheeps, you can, if you wanted to, in theory, you could discard all 3 and search all your polymerizations out of your deck. Leo Dancer is a very powerful card, and the only reason the other Lunalights are in here is because technically there might be a hand or 2 where you have to go from Cat Dancer into Panther Dancer into the Leo Dancer the hard way. But most of the time, you're just going to summon out Kaleido Chick, which every card, by the way, every single card in the deck is searchable. They have tanky, since they're all Beast Warriors. They have their own insert. They have their own Monster Reborn, which is also a search card for any Lunalight monster, period. And they have their own pendulum scales of 1 through 5, so they can special summon out any other monsters except for Wolf. But Wolf is here because Wolf has a pendulum effect that allows you to Miracle Fuse, which means you get a fusion summon using monsters from your graveyard or that's on the field at the cost of banishing them instead of them going to the graveyard.
Combo I just noticed with your deck too is you can Allure Darkness and you can banish the Kaleido Chick.
Yeah, and almost all of them, besides the Pendulum Scales, all of them are dark, so you do get access to Allure of Darkness. Overall, the deck is really consistent because you get a lot of draw power in the deck and you get a lot of searchability. The only quote-unquote downside is you can't play Pot of Desires if you wanted to because you need like almost all your pieces, so you can't really afford to banish it. But other than that, the deck is like, I think it's a pretty solid deck as long as it doesn't have to fight through like a crap ton of back row.
Okay, and then up next we have pretty much zombies. Zombies encompass a huge part of... I could be discussing zombies this whole entire video because there's Zombie Swarm, there's Vendred zombies, which I kind of like, and then there's like just generic zombies. Heck, I bet you there's a hand loop zombie deck out there that I haven't even tried yet, but I know it probably exists still in link format. But the greatest part about the deck is that it has these three great cards: Unizombie, Mezuki, and Gozuki. All three of these cards are really good at just chewing through your deck and special summoning things from your extra deck so that you can make cards like psy-framelord Omega. It's busted because you get two Omegas, because Omega can float himself away to the banish zone and take a card from your opponent's hand, and you summon another one, and if you're for sure that they're not playing Kaijus, it's almost in your advantage to let it stay until your opponent's standby, so you can return a Mezuki to the grave and keep reusing its effect. Gozuki is great because he does pretty much what Unizombie does, but he's not a tuner. That's the sad part. But he can send a zombie from the deck to the grave once per turn, but he has another effect that when he's sent to the grave in particular, you can banish a monster from your grave, except Gozuki, to special summon a zombie monster from your hand. This card, plus any of the Shurinoids, I believe that's what those things are called, the samurai zombie things.
Yeah.
You can pretty much crank out Omega, and with the right hands, which you rarely ever get, but can happen, you can crank out 3 Omegas and strip 3 cards from your opponent's hand before they even get their turn. And still, end on a pretty decent field. This deck also can utilize Allure of Darkness, and in the version that runs Vendrids, you can also utilize Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, if you really want to. Not that I would really suggest it, but I have it in the extra deck for the Vendrid deck for Foolish Burial plays with her if all else fails.
Next deck I'm talking about is Destiny Heroes. Now I know what you're thinking. Destiny Heroes. Why would he talk about that deck? That deck's just a lame bird deck. And that is where you're wrong. Because my version of Destiny Heroes is this really convoluted and really cool combo deck. And we might feature it, and we featured it on the channel before. I was playing versus his Vendred deck. If you haven't seen it, that replay, you can go check it out.
I suggest it is one of our better videos.
Yeah. And it's... the whole idea of the deck is it's this really it's a really combo-heavy deck, and you're not trying to burn them. And I do play Dark Law, and I do play the Mask Changes, but Dark Law is mainly used as a stepping stone, believe it or not. Most of the time I use Dark Law to make Beatrice and Omega in the same turn, because the deck's idea of what it's trying to do is make Decode Talker, then go Beatrice and psy-framelord Omega, and it's trying to go first to do that. And it's not the greatest field ever by any means, but it does have its own protection in the sense that if they try to Raigeki you what happens is you psy-frame Omega one of their cards away, so psy-frame Omega is going to come back. And I do play the Dante in my extra deck for Beatrice, so you get to search off Beatrice or to send to the graveyard, which this is a very graveyard matters deck. And you get the Dante too. Now, and what's really good about this deck is it has tons of draw power. And they're all warriors too. So you get reinforcements of the army. You get Destiny draw. You get Allure of Darkness because they're all darks. You get access to Summoner Monk. because you don't care about discarding spell cards. I have Destiny Hero Malicious here because he's one of the main key combo pieces. I have Destiny Hero Diamond Dude because I like Diamond Dude, and I like the free advantage you can get from him. And Plague Spreader's here as because it's more of a combo piece with Malicious, and it combos well with Destiny Hero Diamond Dude. And Celestial down here in the sideboard. So he's here because he's one of the better Destiny heroes that are out because of his graveyard effect. And if you have no cards in your hand, you burn through all your resources. Right? You're just going and you're comboing off, and your opponent doesn't kill you. And they usually don't. They usually, because the Dante that you bring out with Beatrice can't be targeted by card effects. So it's gonna against a lot of decks, they will have like a harder time getting out of it. So, and you usually end the turn with like no cards in hand or maybe one and everything. So Celestial's there, and he refuels your hand, and whatever you milled off Diamond Dude, if you milled the Destiny draw, or I personally play beginning of the end because I think it's funny. Because if you milled off Diamond Dude and then you don't kill them, you still get the draw 3 for free because Diamond Dude's amazing. But yeah, I think the Destiny Heroes are a really fun deck. They're very combo oriented and they're not necessarily straightforward. But once you learn the deck, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, then the next deck we're going to be talking about is Volcanics. This is a deck I have played a lot of. It also can be comboed with Paleozoics. That was a thing back early format of Zodiac. I built that deck. I didn't run it at any major events or anything because I realized that the Paleozoic mirror match sucks and that Volcanics don't do well in that mirror match because my scatter shot's destroyed by monster effect. This deck is very combo heavy, destroy your opponent's field and board wipe. It's ridiculous the things you can crank out with it, so typically you run Volcanic Rocket because he searches out Blaze Accelerator Reload. The only spell and trap you'll ever search with Rocket is Blaze Accelerator Reload. I really wish we would get more cards that he could search out that are worth playing, but we don't. You run Volcanic Shell because sometimes it feels terrible to draw it. You don't want to draw it. You almost always want to search it from the deck somehow. Like, if you Foolish Burialed it away and then use its effect to add another one, that's fine. But opening your hand with Blaze Cellar Reload and one Volcanic Shell is fine. Volcanic Scattershot, you only want to ever draw one copy of. But in this deck, you're doing so much drawing because you run things like Reckless Greed and other cards that let you draw, that you're almost always going to end up drawing more than one scatter shot eventually, and then it's a -2 in hand economy or in card economy just to play the scatter shot plays to blow up your opponent's field, because scatter shot is Raigeki on both players' turns on their main phase in combination with Accelerator Reload, which reload gives you a draw by discarding the scatter shot, so you're effectively drawing a card and inflicting 1,500 points of damage to your opponent and destroying all of their monsters that can be affected by it. And you just have a trap card that does exactly that, If your opponent destroys the Blaze Cellar Reload, you can use it from the grave to banish and send one Volcanic card from your deck to the grave. I've sent Volcanic Shell before, but typically you're going to send Scattershot. The deck also runs Royal Firestorm Guards, which I forgot to throw up here, but it just returns 4 Pyro monsters to the deck. You shuffle your deck and draw 2, so it reloads the Scatter Shot. That's Volcanics.
Volcanics are also pretty flexible too. We have someone at our locals that plays Volcanics Exodia. I mean, it's kind of janky, but it is a really funny deck, and it's kind of cool to see every now and then.
I thought I've done everything with Volcanics. Then I saw Volcanic Exodia, and even I wouldn't do that.
Alright, next deck I'm talking about is this is Cyber Angel Herald of Perfection deck. Now, The deck is pretty good, and it translates very, very well in the Link format because you never usually need your extra deck. It's just kind of there. Ben 10 is like what makes the deck super good because because the whole deck is you're trying to get out Herald of Perfection, and Herald of Perfection can just negate cards by ditching fairies from your hand. And Ben 10, when it's tributed, so if it's tributed, so even by a ritual summon, you get to add a light fairy monster from your deck to your hand. So you can search another Herald if you want, or any of the other fairies that you're playing, and then it replaces itself with negation. And if you use it for the Herald, and because of the Herald's ritual spell, which I forgot to put in here as well, which we did as well, Dawn of the Herald. Dawn of the Herald says that when it's tributed, when you make Herald of Perfection, you can banish Dawn of the Herald and add one of the rituals or one of the monsters that you use as tribute. And if you notice, Ben 10 is a light fairy as well. So you're getting 2 negations by tributing Ben 10. The deck also gets to run pre-preparation of rites, which just searches the Herald and its spell card just right away. And my version of it, I really enjoy playing Saphira, Queen of Dragons, because Hymn of Light, which is also not on here, her ritual spell protects all ritual monsters from being destroyed, as well as any time when she's ritual summoned, or when when a light monster is sent from your hand or deck to the graveyard. You get to choose one of the following effects: draw 2, discard 1, discard a card at random from your opponent's hand, or add a light monster from your deck, from your graveyard to your hand. That part is the one you're going to use most of the time, because what this does is it gives you at least 1 free negation with Herald. The Cyber Angels, their ritual spell also protects light monsters in general. So it also not only does it protect the ritual ones, but it's going to it's going to protect your Manjus, your Senjus, all your cards. And because they're ritual monsters, they do get the cards I mentioned before: Manjus, Senjus. They're lights, so you can play Honest. And because Ben 10 searches any light fairy, you can search artifacts, and you can play a Cyber Angel like Herald artifact deck if you want, or you can do what I've started doing, and I've just started main decking Lancia in that deck, because Lancia is pretty good against a lot of decks. So, and Ben 10 can search that out too. So yeah, overall I think it's a really good deck. It doesn't like to get kaiju'd, obviously, but besides that, I think that as a whole it's really hard to fight through.
So the next deck we're going to talk about is Dinosaurs. This is a deck I've played a lot of. It sucks that it got nerfed, but it's still a fun deck to play because you get to run Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, and you get to run the pill cards. Well, one of them, which will summon him straight from the deck. So you also get Solian Overraptor, which can search out Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, or it can search out the now limited Miscellaneous Saurus, which kind of sucks that they limited him, but I can see why, because most of the deck revolved around just getting a Miscellaneous in your hand somehow, and then going off and making ridiculous synchro plays, and going into Denlong, which was arguably one of the best level 5 synchro tuners ever. I mean, there's no replacing him. But the deck can still run True Kings and stuff like they used to. You just have to run more of the off-colored ones now, and it doesn't feel as good. But running the off-colored ones means you can run 3 copies of Ultra Evolution Pill and 3 copies of Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, which just Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is pretty busted because he can attack everything. And his other effect of destroying a monster in your hand or field to change all face-up monsters your opponent controls as face-down defense position is pretty good, because a lot of Link strategies, it's obvious to see when they're going to go into something, and you just disrupt it on your opponent's turn and do it once. And he can destroy himself with his own effect. So he's kind of pretty good. Like, if your opponent targets him with Paleozoic Dino-Miscus, you can straight up just activate his effect if they control a monster and destroy himself so he doesn't get banished, and fuel the next Ultimate Conductor Trano play with either Double Evolution Pill or just banish him to get another Conductor Trano out. He also, if he is successfully summoned, not through the pill effect but by his own, can be brought back with Soul-Eating Oviraptor. I caught a lot of players off guard when I did that. They're like, wait, what? And it's like, yes, he's a Simi-Nomi monster. He can be special summoned after he's been correctly summoned. So Dinosaurs are still a pretty competitive deck for locals and stuff. I don't think they're going to see too much tournament play because they've really been knocked down a peg, but it's a really good rogue deck because you can run a slew of stuff. And that's pretty much it for Dinosaurs. I'm not a huge expert on them. I just liked playing the deck.
Okay. And the last deck we want to talk about is one of my favorite archetypes, and a lot of fans like this archetype. A lot of because of the anime, and sometimes, depending on who you talk to, it's because they like the artwork. And that's Harpies. And I have Harpy Channeler and Harpist up here because Channeler is discard a Harpy card. That could be any Harpy card too. It could be the field spell or any card with Harpy in the name, except for Harpy's brother and he was errata to Sky Scout. But anyway, you discard one Harpy card, special summon a Harpy monster from your deck except in face-up defense, except for Channeler. So, and the reason I have this deck up here is not only is it one of my favorite decks of all, like just in general, it's also a pretty flexible deck in terms of how you want to build it. The deck can main deck Necro Valley if you just take out their trap card that lets you special summon a bunch from the graveyard. It has searching through Harpist. You can play Divine Wind of Mist Valley and then combo it with Dancer and Dancers and throw out more monsters for the free. They have their own version of True King of All Calamities that is searchable, and it's called Harpy's Featherstorm. So if you control a wind-winged beast monster, English is hard, and till the end of this turn negate any effects your opponent from monsters that they activate. If you control Harpy, you can activate it from your hand. It's actually a really strong card, and you can just get hosed by it completely if they don't see it coming. They also have this ridiculous card called Hysteric Sign. When Hysteric Sign is activated, you add Elegant Egotist from your deck or graveyard to your hand. And during the end phase, if it's sent from your hand or field to the graveyard, you can add up to 3 Harpy cards with different names from your deck. So this gives you really, really good discard fodder to cards like Summoner Monk if you wanted to go that route. Now, I don't recommend it, but with Channeler, you can throw out Harpy's Pet Dragon, and she says she has another effect that while you control a dragon type monster, her level is 7. So so you can make rank 7s in the deck, although I don't usually recommend it because that version of the deck is a lot more bricky, and like you can get more awkward hands that way. It's also worth mentioning that all the new Harpy monsters state that their name becomes Harpy Lady when they're on the field or in the graveyard, and this works with their field spell. So, because their field spell says when any Harpy Lady or Harpy Lady sisters are summoned, normal or special, the player who conducted the summon targets one spell or trap card on the field and destroys it. The downside of that is it is mandatory. So there will be matchups where you'll think about siding it out, even though it's one of your better cards, because if they don't have any back row, you have to start targeting your own, or you'll just have to just destroy your hunting ground. But the good thing about it is that if they're not playing a lot of back row, you can just discard it with Channeler. So the deck overall is just like, it's a rank 4 spam deck at its heart, but it has access to Icarus attack and a lot of the and a lot of really powerful rank 4s, and a lot of good trap cards and stuff like that. So you can build it stun oriented or just XE spam. And the deck isn't too harmed by links as much as one would think. Like I've made Decode Talker in the deck before, and it doesn't usually hurt too bad. And what if we get a wind version of Mrs. Radiant? So just 2 wind monsters, and then they all gain 500. It'd be a lot better. And overall, the deck is still pretty good. Like you don't. The best part about it is that you don't have to run any normal monsters. All your monsters kind of actually feel good to play, so there's no real kinks in your deck. And yeah, overall, I just really like the deck because it's a super flexible which way you want to go. You can stun them out or do whatever.
I think that that's all we have for decks that we're playing that we think are pretty decent to be playing at your locals, assuming that your locals isn't super heavy meta. Even some of these can still keep up with the meta, though. I mean, I think that'll be all for this time. Maybe next time we'll start doing a few deck profiles on a few of these decks to kind of give you a general idea of how they play, and what combos they actually have. Like, I completely skipped over the dupe frog that I threw in here for frogs, but I think that's all we have. Any last words, Michael?
Overall, I think our deck choices were pretty good. I know that personally, I think that there's a lot of cards I personally just hate to play versus. Like, I think all these decks that we mentioned are good. I just personally dislike trying to play against Ultimate Conductor, Tyranno, and Scattershot because I just find them annoying. But also, one thing that is important that I figured I'd kind of mention is that Ultimate Conductor, Tyranno is an inherent summon and not an effect that special summons.
Yes, he is inherent. That's also what makes him good. And shoutouts to my cat who always seems to come into the room when I'm recording and meowing at me.
Alright.
And that is
I
all.
think that's it.
Later.